Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big Jeff's Football Insights every Thursday on the Big Ten Huddle. We are presented and brought to you by FanDuel as part of the Believe Podcasting Network. And I'm your host, Jeff McMichael, Big Jeff McMichael. And this was pre-recorded earlier on Thursdays. We're going to continue to do that. Got a good podcast tonight. I have a special topic similar to what I did last week. A little bit different, though. I'm going to be grading every Big Ten team, comparing their talent level via the 247 Sports Talent Composite Rankings versus the record through week 9 and kind of giving a letter grade to all 18 teams. So we're going to do that. Similar to last week, I compared the talent levels for the AP top 25 teams to say which teams were over and underachieving. So this week, it's just focused on the 18 Big Ten teams. Just a reminder, please like the podcast for us and subscribe to the Big Ten Huddle. Even forward the podcast if ideally, that would be great for us as well. Remember, our goal is to provide comprehensive analysis of all Big Ten teams in an unbiased way. Before I go on the agenda of what we're covering today, just on a personal note, I know I've been giving updates on my son's high school football team. Last week, we played a number 8 ranked Blessed Trinity, who's in our region. I brought that up because they have a 5-star defensive end who was the number 1 player in Georgia, named David Jacobs. He is in fact, in the junior class, he's only a junior. He's number 12th rated overall player in the nation, according to 247. So pretty big deal. And he was as good as advertised. Their defense was excellent. They have much more than that one defender. So we lost 48-0. Ouch. We are now 5-4 as a team, and we need to win our last game, which is tomorrow night. So pretty cool. Halloween night across the country. There's going to be a lot of high school teams playing. Should be fun for a lot of the students, probably getting dressed up and everything. But for us, if we don't win that game, the season's over. If we do win, we'll probably get a number 1 seed in the playoffs. So keeping the fingers crossed for my son's football team. All right, so the agenda for this week, 3 things. First, I'm going to cover how I did in week 9, and then draw some insights from that as well. Number 2, we're going to do that grading of teams across the Big Ten relative to their talent level. And then finally, the week 10 picks. I'm going to choose 5 of the most interesting games. This week, we have another what I call a virtual playoff elimination game where USC plays at Nebraska. The other thing to mention is just to remind, I do have a website called bigjeffsfootball.com. So for these 5 predictions, I am going to include that article by tonight that you can read. So I provide even more detailed analysis than I give on this podcast for all 5 of those picks. So hopefully that can help you out. So first topic, let's talk about week 9 picks and how I did. First of all, it's my 3rd straight week of going 3-2. And I'm finally back over 500. It's the first time since week 1 or after week, I guess it was week 2 that I went under 500. So it's been a while, been a slog to get there, but I am over 500. I'm 23-22 on the year, 51%. I did win my Lock City game. Remember, each week I choose a Lock City game. That just means of the 5 predictions I make, it's the one that I feel most confident in. So I am 4-2 on Lock City games. So what did I get right and wrong in week 9? And just remember, even though this week there's only 1 virtual playoff elimination game, last week it was really exciting. There were 3 different playoff elimination games involving teams with only 2 losses. So what was the first one I got wrong, which we always start with? And that's the one in the first column here. Indiana was giving 25.5 points to UCLA. I had Indiana winning easily by 20, but obviously if any of you watched the game, they did what they do under Kurt Cignetti, and they blew out UCLA from the start. They won 56-6. And it was 35-3 at halftime. Just an amazing performance. the insight on Indiana is their defense continues to show they are definitely a top 5 unit, maybe along with Ohio State, the first or second best defense in the nation. I mean, statistically, certainly that would show that. I looked at the first 5 drives for UCLA. Other than going through each one, I'll just say of those 5 drives in the first half, UCLA had 94 total yards. So not even 100 yards. And so this game was over early. I thought UCLA, with their rejuvenated ground game, maybe that could keep them in it. But in this one, they only rushed for 88 total yards, 3.5 yards per carry. So that's not going to get it done. And then the other thing is Nico started out with just a terrible pick 6 to Indiana. I mean, it's a great play by Aiden Fisher, the linebacker, but really it's a throw that Nico just can't make. And it kind of just killed, I think, UCLA's confidence that they could get it done. UCLA has an off week before playing Nebraska at home, and that's probably going to be a must-win for them. They're 3-5 overall. To get to a bowl game, that next game at Nebraska is probably a must-win. So the next one, the second game I lost, was Illinois at Washington. That was one of the virtual playoff elimination games of 5-2 teams playing each other. Washington was a 4.5-point favorite. And I thought Illinois would play them tough and maybe lose by 3. So I didn't get it right in that Washington would win, but certainly Illinois did not cover that. They won 42-25, clearly looked like the better football team. They outgained the Illini 449 to 337. Damon Williams, after struggling the previous week against Michigan, he just had a monster game. 280 yards through the air, 4 TDs, no picks, and then 66 carries on the ground. So I just think Williams nationally is drastically underrated, and Washington as well. I mean, I know JR and Zach like to talk about SEC bias a lot. In the case of Washington, it's there. It's crazy. They're 6-2. They've got NFL guys, certainly on the offensive side. And it's just ridiculous that they're not a top 25 team. Just a major miss by the AP poll. For Illinois, loss makes them 5-3. It knocks them out of any playoff consideration. With the 53-point loss earlier in the year to Illinois, I actually thought Illinois, even if they got to 10-2, unless they were really dominating people, I had my doubts that they maybe would be chosen in the 12-team playoff, but this third loss definitely eliminates that. And they didn't play a clean game. Had 82 yards in penalties, and then they lost the turnover battle. Luke Altmaier had 2 interceptions, so they were -2 in turnovers, and you just can't have that against a good Washington team. But Illinois could still get to a 9-win season. I showed that they have the easiest remaining Big Ten schedule per Pro Football Focus. So, another 9-3 season would be awesome for Bielema and crew. So definitely still some strong positives for Illinois. What did I get right in week 9 with my 3 wins? So the first one I got right, it was the second virtual playoff elimination game. Nebraska eliminated Northwestern by winning 20-21. I had the Wildcats covering, getting the 7.5 points. So I basically won by a half a point. So I just barely squeaked in there. Frankly, this game could have won either way. With 11 minutes left in the game, it was 21-all. Neither passing game was very effective, both under 160 yards. Northwestern actually ran the ball better, 172 yards on the ground. On the good side, for an insight on Nebraska, that struggling offensive line, which had given up 9 sacks the previous week to Minnesota, they only gave up 1 in this game to the Wildcats, so that was promising. And the other thing is they are now winning the 1-score games, right? That's been the problem going back to the Scott Frost era. This year in 1-score games, they're 3-1 on the year, and they're already bowl eligible with their 6 wins. So really a good thing there. Now on the downside, to me, they don't look like a legit playoff contender. Not to say that they can't, play real sharp down the stretch here, but their remaining schedule is tough. They have games versus USC, of course, at UCLA, at Penn State, and Iowa as well. So not an easy path. For Northwestern, I think their fans have to feel great about how competitive they are under David Braun, and they need only one more win to get to the 6 wins for bowl eligibility. Their remaining schedule is tough, though. 10th toughest in the nation, at USC versus Michigan versus Minnesota and at Illinois. So still a lot of work to do, but some promising things coming out of Evanston there. The other game I got right, this is the third virtual playoff elimination game. I took Iowa to beat Minnesota by 10. Now, they were an 8.5-point favorite. So they covered that, and basically they boat raced the Gophers, winning 41-3. Similar to the Indiana game, this was over early. And people wondered, how does this happen after Minnesota easily beat Nebraska the prior week by 18? That they looked dominant. What happened? So just two big things I had said in the analysis of this game played a factor. I guess the first thing really is, are we totally underestimating how good this Iowa team is? There are only 2 losses. One is on the road by 3 points to Iowa State, arch rival, and at the time they were top 25 team. And then number 2 ranked Indiana at home. They lost by 5, but really anyone who saw that game knew Indiana had to score a late touchdown. Mark Gronowski got hurt. If it wasn't for that, frankly, I think there's a really good chance Iowa would have won that game. And you can imagine if Iowa was coming in at a 7-1 team, what a different conversation everyone would be having about this Iowa team. The other thing, Iowa is just clearly better in the trenches here on both sides of the ball. The other thing with the intangibles on this game, Minnesota was playing their 5th week in a row, and then, an emotional game over Nebraska, who's a rival. And then first-year starting quarterback Drake Lindsey playing on the road against that Norm Parker, tough to play against zone defense. And sure enough, that turned out to be the case. He really struggled, threw for only 109 yards and 3 interceptions. So that's just killer for Minnesota. And I was just talking about how Washington should be rated. Iowa, it's even worse in my book, especially given that close call against Indiana and given how dominant Indiana has been. I think they should be more, not only ranked, but more like 14th in the nation in my top 25 rankings. I don't publish them, but I do them for myself every week. So that's just a ridiculous thing. And it's all about where you started. The AP poll voters are just slow to change. They're like old people, and I'm an old person, so I understand about slow to change. Once they establish something and that's in their mind, it's hard to get them off of it. And it's really a shame. Iowa's remaining schedule is very tough. They got an upcoming game against Oregon next. That's going to be just an awesome game to watch. But if they win out, the good news is with that schedule, I am convinced, despite not being in the top 25 right now, the committee doesn't give a damn about what the poll voters think. With a tough schedule that they're going to have if they win out, Iowa, I really believe, will be in with a 10-2 mark. Finally, the final game I got right was Michigan State. They were getting 14.5 points from Michigan, and I had them losing by 13, so just barely covering that. And really, with under 3 minutes left, Michigan was up by 11, and everything looked kind of bad for Minnesota. I got saved by a 75-yard last-minute drive led by the backup quarterback Alessio Milozovic. He finished with a 25-yard passing TD with only 7 seconds left. So it's amazing if you're a bettor here living on the edge. That pass wasn't completed, and then you lose that game. So I was lucky here. Michigan only got 86 yards passing, but it didn't matter. Their defense really just totally dominated the Spartans. The run game was excellent, led by the return of to me, the best running back in the Big Ten, Justice Haynes. He's from down here in Atlanta where I live. Ran for 152 yards, 2 TDs. Jalen Marshall also ran for over 100 yards. So, I think a takeaway, and it's more longer term, the way Michigan is built this year and the way Ohio State doesn't run the ball well, if in Ann Arbor for that last game they get bad weather, that really would magnify the chances that Michigan could beat Ohio State again, because they're built for, running and getting tough yards, controlling the clock and everything. Ohio State's got that strong passing attack, and the running game is not quite as good. So it's just something to keep in mind. And then for Michigan State, they just look like a lost team to me with no real identity. They don't seem very good at anything, in my opinion, and that's why, a lot of talk about Jonathan Smith and his long-term prospects there in East Lansing. All right, so let's get to the second topic here. I'm going to bring that up. So I put this in a table. We're going to talk about grading all the Big Ten teams and comparing their records. And you can see here in the table, I show the team, their overall record and their Big Ten record, and then comparing that to the 247 Sports Talent Composite. And that's a national ranking that we'll be talking about some. I also graded, based on that composite talent ranking, all 18 teams from 1 to 18 in the Big Ten on where they stand as far as talent to be able to give them the grade. So for those watching on the screen, I have 4 different categories, if you will. I have 6 teams in like a dark green background. Those are teams who got grades in the A level. Then there's 4 teams that are in light green. Those are getting B grades of some sort. The light tan are the 4 teams with C grades. And then finally, I have 4 teams in the brown shade at the bottom. They're the lowest. They get D and F grades. So let's hit some highlights on these teams and kind of go through this. And for those listening, I'll do the best I can to kind of share what I'm showing on screen. So for those 6 teams getting A grades, not surprisingly, Indiana is the only team getting an A+ grade. They're unbeaten. They're ranked number 2 in the nation. Some think they're number 1, and you can definitely make an argument for that. They actually have the worst rated Big Ten talent level, number 18 for that. They're number 72 overall in talent composite index. And so that was part of last week's content, because Indiana is, of course, in the AP top 25. But it really speaks to why the Indiana story is so crazy. Frankly, it's why those who really follow recruiting still doubt Indiana. They just think, how talented can this team really be? Because they just haven't recruited to it. And yes, the talent composite index, to be clear, factors, looks at the recruit rankings of the existing talent plus anyone who transferred in. It looks like their original teams, recruiting rankings. So it really is an amalgamation of those 2 things. Just speaks to the kudos Kirk Cignetti and his staff get from a talent evaluation and development perspective. The next, I give both Ohio State and Oregon A grades. OSU is number 1 ranked, of course. They show as 3rd best talent in the nation. And if you're number 1 ranked, I think you get an A. Oregon, despite the 1 loss, they're number 6 ranked in the nation per the AP. Their talent composite index is number 5. So they're right about equal to where their talent is. And in my book, that would deserve an A as well. The next one down is Iowa. I give them an A. So they're 4-1 in the Big Ten, 6-2 overall. Their talent index nationally is only 42nd, and they're 12th in the Big Ten. So I'm grading these teams relative to their talent, and based on that, Kirk Ferentz always gets the most out of his talent. As usual, has a great offensive line, great defensive line. They get an A. And then Northwestern, they're 3-2 in the Big Ten. Overall, they're 5-3. They're 16th best in Big Ten talent, 57th in the nation. That's not very high, so I got to give them an A, right? They're overperforming their talent. Washington's the last team in the A range. I'm actually giving them an A-. They're 6-2 overall. They're 37th rated in talent in the nation, 9th in the Big Ten. So maybe you could argue they should be a flat-out A, but just to separate them a little bit, I gave them an A-. All right, let's move on to our B-graded teams. So that's in the light green. So Illinois, I have them first. they're 5-3, 2-3 in the Big Ten, but have played their hardest games, I think, so far. Their talent is only 17th in the Big Ten, though. They're ranked 64th overall in the nation. I give them a B plus. I think Bielema and his staff just do a great job of maximizing their talent. Minnesota, they're 3-2 in the Big Ten, 5-3 overall. I give them a B. They're 11th in Big Ten talent level. So I think, a B is a good grade, right? They exceed their performance exceeds their talent level. And then Nebraska, I'm also giving them a B. Sorry, I'm giving Nebraska a B minus, so a little bit lower. 20th best in the nation talent level. They have the 6th best talent in the Big Ten. So at 3-2 in the Big Ten, they're probably about where they should be, maybe a little bit below where they should be, actually. So that's why I gave them a B minus. And then USC, kind of in a similar boat. They have the 17th best national talent level. They're 5-2, 3-1. If they would have beat Notre Dame, then I could have given them an A. But I'm just going to give them a B minus so far year to date here. So then the C grade levels have 4 teams. I'm kind of lumping together these teams. I have Maryland, Rutgers, and Purdue. They're all 52nd, 53rd, and 54th consecutively nationally in talent level. And in the Big Ten, they're 13th, 14th, and 15th. So they're really in the kind of the bottom half, if you will. But the issue is their Big Ten records are terrible. So combined, those 3 teams are 2-12 conference record in the Big Ten. So I'm giving Maryland a C plus, Rutgers a C, and then Purdue a C minus. Purdue 0-5 in the Big Ten. Those teams are underperforming actually their talent level, and thus they get C levels. Then Michigan is the other outlier here. They have the 11th best talent in the nation. They are 4th best in the Big Ten. And I give them a C. They are 4-1 in the Big Ten, 6-2 overall. After I kind of put that table together and gave the grade, maybe I'm underestimating them for their grade. Maybe they should be a B, right? I just think, they're ranked 21st. And it's a shame that in those couple biggest games at USC, at Oklahoma, I guess that's why I'm giving them a C. They just didn't show out. They were clearly, if you watch those games, they were way outplayed in those games. So that's why I'm going to stick with the C for them. But they do have the true freshman quarterback. So, that does make it harder to have a higher level of performance because, you're going to struggle, and he has struggled on the road. So I really think the bottom line, Michigan is really where they should be and should feel good about the future. Finally, we have our 4 worst graded teams. They all have good overall talent levels. Let's do UCLA first. I give them a D. UCLA, the reason there was optimism coming in the year, their talent level is ranked 26th in the nation by 247, the composite. So that's 7th best in the Big Ten. So getting out to that terrible start, I know they won the 3-0, but the fact is they are 3-5 on the season. So I can't give them a high rating despite the 3-game winning streak. I'm giving them a D. Yeah, Michigan State, also 38th in talent level, rated 10th best in the Big Ten, but they're performing like they might be the worst team in the Big Ten. 0-5 record in conference. I'm giving them a D minus. You probably could argue an F for Jonathan Smith and crew there. And then Penn State, 10th best talent in the nation. Started number 2 to start the year, as we all know. They're 0-4 in the Big Ten, and their non-conference was pretty bad. So can't give them a lot of credit for winning those 3 games. I give them an F. I mean, there's no doubt that this is about as bad as you can get. Kind of stunning there for Penn State for sure. And then finally, Wisconsin. You can imagine the grade where Luke Fickell's going to get here. 28th best talent in the nation. That's the thing that has give Wisconsin fans hope. If you listen to their podcast, Fickell's recruited pretty well. The issue is he hasn't had a balanced recruiting, meaning There are certain position groups he has not recruited well, like offensive line, which is shocking because that's where usually Wisconsin excels. Wisconsin 8th best overall talent in the Big Ten, and yet here they are 0-5 in the Big Ten. I give them an F as well. So thought that was pretty interesting. Similar to my write-up in my 5 games I'm predicting, which we're going to talk about. I will put this chart in a little article on my website at bigjeffsfootball.com. Okay, let me back out here, get a little drink of water before we cover our last topic, which is getting into the 5 predicted games of the year. All right. So there's only 6 Big Ten games this week. So I chose to leave out Michigan State at Minnesota. The Spartans have yet to win a game, as we just talked about. And then Minnesota, with their 3 losses, they're out of the playoff picture. So I decided to leave that aside. Minnesota is a 4.5-point favorite, by the way, according to FanDuel in that one. So the games I will be covering in order are Ohio State, Penn State at Ohio State, Rutgers at Illinois, Indiana at Maryland, Purdue at Michigan, and the final one will be USC at Nebraska. All right, so let's talk about Ohio State against Penn State. Ohio State's a 20.5-point favorite. That's just a huge spread for this game, which we're going to be talking about. These games between these 2 teams tend to be pretty close. Both teams are coming off bye weeks. They're both in very different places, though. This is the Fox Big Noon game of the week, to the chagrin of Ohio State fans, of course. Last game, Ohio State shut out Wisconsin 34-0 in Madison. Ohio State has beat Penn State 8 years in a row and won 12 of the last 13 games. The last time Penn State won in Columbus was 2011. So it's been 14 years. It was a 20-14 Penn State victory. That was pre James Franklin. We talked about Penn State. This will be the second game for interim coach Terry Smith. It was promising, at Iowa, which we've established is a really good football team. They only lost 25-24, and it took a late drive by Iowa to get that done. Adding to the intrigue of this game, of course, Penn State defensive coordinator Penn State defensive coordinator is Jim Knowles, and he's the former Ohio State defensive coordinator that helped the Buckeyes get a national championship. So, he would love to help Penn State pull out the upset here. And to me, the question is, can Penn State come up with game plans on both sides of the ball that fully utilizes the talent that they still have, which clearly they haven't been able to do up to this point? It's been really disappointing performance on the field, and maybe the game planning has been part of that. The other thing is Penn State 1-6 against the spread this year. The only cover was actually the last game against Iowa. Ohio State is 6-0-1 against the spread. So, some people say, well, who is Ohio State beating? Why are they number 1? Well, they're pounding people really good, more than Vegas even expects. So they've been dominant, and it's a part of the reason why they are number 1. So as I like to do, I'm going to first talk 3 good reasons why Ohio State can, beat Penn State by more than that 20.5. And so I think number 1, just in general, the Ohio State defense does not appear to have any major weakness. They're being talked about as an all-time great defense. I mean, they're only giving up 5.9 points a game through 7 games. And so bottom line, it's going to be tough for a struggling Penn State offense to have success against that defense. Ohio State, first in the nation in scoring defense. Also in total defense, they only give up 217 yards a game. And then they're third in pass defense, only giving up 131 yards per game. And ironically, I just threw out that stat. I found it interesting. They're third in the nation in pass defense. That's only third in the Big Ten in pass defense. So Oregon is number 1 in pass defense, and Nebraska is number 2. So it's crazy. The Big Ten has the top 3 pass defenses in the nation. Rush defense, they give up 86 yards per game. That's 8th in the nation. So across the board, it's just crazy statistics. Meanwhile, Penn State's total offense only ranks 12th in the Big Ten. They're 14th in passing offense and 7th in rushing offense. 4.79 yards per carry. That's solid. 42nd in the nation, but not spectacular. So I just think, it's hard to see Penn State having the firepower to really hurt Ohio State a lot on defense. A reason to like the Buckeyes. Number 2, that elite Ohio State defense coached by Matt Patricia, of course, who's had, been leveraging NFL type schemes. He's going to do all he can to confuse a first-year freshman starting quarterback for Penn State and Ethan Grunkemeyer. Unfortunately, Drew Aller, of course, is out for the year. Penn State's receiving core is pretty shaky, so they're not given that much help. I just think that Ohio State defense under Patricia versus a young quarterback specific to this game is a really bad mismatch there. Number 3 reason to like Ohio State. On offense, their biggest strength, of course, is their pass offense, led by Julian Sayin and his crazy statistics, 80% completion percentage. Their running game, though, has relatively struggled, but Penn State's rushing defense is not great. So I think Ohio State could actually be pretty well balanced in this game, more than normal, which will allow them to control the game even more, potentially limit Penn State's possessions there. Penn State's run defense, only 16th in the Big Ten. They're giving them 159 yards per game. So that's what I'm talking about. And really, in looking at individual players, the weaknesses at defensive tackle, the highest ranked player per PFF among defensive tackles for Penn State is 39th best player in the Big Ten, Zane Durant. So for a team like Penn State that's traditionally really good on defense, that's not good. And then they're really missing the linebacker Tony Rojas as well. Talked about Julian saying he looks, he's only a first-year starter, but just great pocket presence, not making mistakes, 19 TDs, 3 interceptions, and throwing to arguably the 2 best receivers in the nation, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Ohio State's rushing attack, I do think the potential for improvement, youth movement. Bo Jackson has gotten a lot of carries already this year, but in the last game against Wisconsin, Isaiah West got 9 carries at 6.1 yards per carry. So I can see them going to those young running backs more to get more run after they get hit. 3 reasons to take Penn State. Number 1, even though Penn State rarely wins this game, as we talked about earlier, they almost always play Ohio State really close. They have no pressure on them at this point. Not everyone has some pressure, but a lot less pressure than normal, right? Because no one is expecting them to win this game. And the pressure for Penn State and under Franklin, I think, has been a problem in the past. They've played a little bit tight. So without Franklin, I expected more aggressive, let it loose game plan. During the 8-game Ohio State winning streak, here's the winning margins for Ohio State: 7 points, 8, 13, 9, 13, 11, 1, and 1. So that's an average of only 8 points per win for Ohio State. And the spread is 20.5. To me, that spread, a decent chance Penn State covers that. Number 2, why I like Penn State. Jim Knowles, coached with Ryan Day for 3 years, knows him well. There's a potential to leverage that knowledge against Ryan Day. And Penn State, despite not having great statistics defensively, they still have a lot of talent across all 3 levels. They have been underperforming. I expect them to play a more inspired game, and then really they do have the talent, like I said, to help contain that Ohio State offense. Number 3 reason to like Penn State, more specific to the defense. The defensive ends are capable of generating good pressure on quarterback Julian Sayin. So that's going to be a key here. If you give Sayin a time, which the Ohio State offensive line for pass blocking has been really good, but if you can get pressure on him, that can change the dynamic here. So that's the hope for Penn State. They have talented defensive ends. They have 3 players per PFF in the top 22 in pass rushing among defensive ends in the Big Ten. Chaz Coleman, a true freshman, is ranked 2nd. He hasn't gotten many snaps, but he's ranked 2nd among defensive end. And then Zariah Fisher is ranked 14th. Denai Dennis Sutton is 22nd. So really, they do have capable people to put pressure on Sayin. So what's my call in this game? In games like this where I expect Penn State to struggle, I guess you really look at how much can Penn State score. They're averaging 26.5 points a game in Big Ten play. They did score 24 also on the road against a really good Iowa defense. So 24 on the road with Grunkmeyer starting in his first game. I think they could get to 14 points or in the upper teens. And I'm expecting a more aggressive game plan to get there. So OSU would need 35 points to cover that, assuming Iowa gets to 14. And then the other thing, just to remember, of the 4 losses Penn State has, they're by a combined 13 points. So this is, bottom line, really a tough call. I like Ohio State to win for sure, but 20.5 points. I'm going to assume Penn State plays their best game. They lose by 17. So I'm calling Penn State to get the cover, but Ohio State 31, Penn State 14 as the final score. And my confidence on that one, I'm going to rank to cover that, is low. All right. Game number 2, Illinois at home, a 12.5 point favorite over Rutgers. This has the highest over-under per FanDuel, 63.5. Illinois, of course, we've talked about them, 5-3 overall, 2-3 Big Ten. So really disappointing loss at Washington because it knocked them out of playoff contention for sure. They need to kind of recalibrate their goals if they're thinking, we're going to make the playoffs and be like Indiana. Rutgers, 4-4 overall, 1-4 in the Big Ten, but Utes come from behind win at Purdue 27-24, so it breaks their 4-game losing streaks, keep them in the hunt for a bowl game. For the season, Rutgers 4-4 against the spread. Illinois is 5-3, but has not covered the past 2 games against the spread. So this is a game, really looking at the stats, between 2 of the worst statistical defenses in the Big Ten. The stats are really ugly here. So bear with me. In points per game, Rutgers is dead last in the Big Ten, giving up 30.6 points a game. Illinois is 16th, so third to last in the Big Ten, 27.5 points a game they're giving up. Total defense, pretty much the same. Rutgers dead last in the Big Ten, 118th in the nation, in fact. Illinois is 16th in total defense in the Big Ten, 85th in the nation. And then pass defense, that's really the biggest culprit between these 2 teams. Illinois ranking last in the Big Ten in pass defense, and Rutgers is third to last, 16th in pass defense. So on offense, both teams are very similar. Illinois is 8th in Big Ten scoring, about 33 points a game. Rutgers is right behind them at 9th in scoring. And then they're both offenses are pass-oriented. 2 seasoned quarterbacks here playing well for Rutgers, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and Illinois' Luke Altmaier, of course. Rutgers second in the Big Ten in passing. Illinois is 7th. So to me, this game will come down to which struggling defense is better equipped and more likely to contain the other's offense. So which defense is better equipped to contain that offense? So let's look at that closer. So I have 2 things here why Illinois can cover. Number one, Illinois, and we've talked about this, very susceptible to sacks, and that's going to disrupt Altmaier in that strong passing game if they're getting sacks and a lot of pressure. Despite the better game against Illinois, they're still giving up 23 sacks for the year, 118th in the nation, tied for third worst in the Big Ten. But Rutgers' sacks data shows they're unlikely to take advantage of this Illinois weakness. Rutgers only has 9 sacks for the year. That's a little over 1 a game, and 120. That's 122nd in the nation. So they don't strive in that. And then if you look at Rutgers' defensive front four per PFF, they really don't rank well. So I just think it all adds up to it's unlikely Rutgers is really going to be able to consistently put pressure on Altmaier without blitzing a lot potentially, and that can open up big plays for Illinois. Number two, why I like Illinois, efficiency stats show Illinois' pass offense is more likely to have success than Rutgers' pass defense, than vice versa. So it really points to a bigger day for Illinois and quarterback Luke Altmaier. So getting more specific on that, Illinois in pass efficiency offense ranks 12th in the nation, right? Rutgers in their pass efficiency defense, trying to defend that great passing attack, is 129th in the nation, last in the Big Ten. So really poor there, and that's further reason why I expect a big day from Altmaier here. Why take the point with Rutgers? So I talked about, first, Rutgers has continued to try running the ball. Not surprising from a Greg Schiano-based team. They just don't do it efficiently. They're only averaging for the year 3.6 yards per carry. So I expect Rutgers to continue to try to run, but the success really is going to continue to depend on the pass game. And I do think there's a reason for optimism there. I just said Illinois will have more success, but I think similar stats to that show Rutgers will also be able to move the ball well against Illinois in the passing game. Rutgers is last in the Big Ten in sacks allowed, 3.5 sacks, 3.5 sacks per game. And then Illinois is only 79th in the nation in sacks generated, 1.9 per game, so 15 total. So they may not be able to take advantage of that weakness. Rutgers in actually Rutgers does allow a lot of sacks, but Illinois is not sacking a lot. So I didn't say that correctly, but I don't think Illinois is going to be able to take advantage of that weakness on the line in Rutgers allowing sacks. Illinois also 114th in the nation in pass efficiency defense. They've yielded 17 passing touchdowns. So really, that's where Illinois has had a lot of injuries in that secondary. So that's been a big deal. It reflects in these statistics. Rutgers, not just a really good quarterback who's experienced, 3 great receiver options, 3 different receivers with over 400 yards, led by KJ Duff's 761 yards. So he's 4th in the nation and 1st in the Big Ten in receiving yards. So I do think Rutgers is going to have success passing the ball. So what's my call on this one? We have 2 weak defenses. Stats clearly point to Illinois offense having more success. So the question is it enough, though, to cover a 12.5 point spread? Turnovers could play a role in this, but if you look at that, both teams are similar. Rutgers is +1 on the year. Illinois is +2 on the year. So no clear advantage there. Something to consider, Illinois, last time they had a really bad loss, that 53-point loss to Indiana. They bounced back really strong the next week as an underdog at home. They played well and upset USC. This is kind of a similar scenario. On the road against Washington, didn't look good, played poorly, disappointing. Then they come home and they're an underdog again, just like USC. So I think that's the similar scenario here. Also, Illinois is only their second game coming off their bye week. I still think they should be fresh, therefore. Rutgers, on the other hand, playing their 4th game in a row. and 3 of those 4 games are on the road here. So I think Rutgers could be the more mentally and physically fatigued team. Those intangibles favor Illinois, and I'm going to take them to cover the 12.5 and win by 2 touchdowns. So I'm calling it Illinois 38, Rutgers 24. My confidence on this one is medium. All right, game 3. We have Indiana as a 21.5 point favorite per FanDuel at Maryland. 51.5 is the over-under. Maryland 4-3 overall, 1-3 in the Big Ten. Coming off a bye after the brutal stretch of 3 straight losses. So 3 straight losses of 10 total points to Washington, Nebraska, and UCLA. So really frustrating. Mike Locksley's struggles in October have continued. He's 1-8 in October. It's a crazy statistic. Maryland's remaining schedule, 12th toughest in the Big Ten. So getting the 6 wins is actually viable, not overly difficult schedule for Maryland. After Indiana, they play at Rutgers, at Illinois, home versus Michigan, and then Michigan State. So 2 more wins to get to a bowl game. I think that's very viable for the Terps. Indiana, number 2 in the nation, undefeated, on track to potentially, Big Ten championship game and looking really good for the playoffs. Indiana only has the 65th toughest remaining schedule in the nation, and that's the second easiest in the Big Ten, only behind Illinois. I know a lot of SEC people, the SEC mafia, so to speak, like to talk about that. And that's all well and fine and everything. But, you play the schedule you have. Indiana's beating the crap out of people. If you watch Indiana play, those that know football know they're a damn good team. Against the spread, Indiana 5-3 this year. Maryland is 5-2. But Maryland has covered the last 4 straight games against the spread. So I have 3 reasons why Indiana can cover. Indiana defense playing elite across all levels, and only really balanced offenses likely have a chance to succeed against them. And Maryland does not have a balanced offense. They have an ineffective run game, and thus their offense throws 62% of the time or more. That doesn't bode well for Maryland for sure. And just going a little more detailed, Indiana's defense, clearly the strength of the team, 3rd in the nation, they rank in total defense, in points per game. They're only behind Ohio State. They give up about 11 points a game. I'm not going to go through all the stats, but just across the board, they're excellent. And the other thing to say is, this was a stat gem here I didn't know. Indiana is 2nd in the nation in sacks with 29. So very disruptive front 4. And frankly, that's the key to their defense, but they are strong across all 3 levels. Speaking of that Pro Football Focus numbers, they don't show a single starter as a weakness. So those familiar with PFF, you have those in under green status, meaning they're well above average. 10 of the 11 Indiana starters are in green status, where their ranking is at least 74 rating or better. 60 is average, I believe. So just strong across the board. The only person not is Jamari Sharp, who's a cornerback, and even he's rated pretty good. So Maryland total offense 13th in the Big Ten, but again, that rushing offense is the problem, averaging only 101 yards per game. So too reliant on that passing attack, making them one-dimensional. And then even that passing offense, despite being pretty good, their passing efficiency is only 107th in the nation. And if you look at their offensive line rankings per PFF, that ranks pretty poorly. And that's not good against a good front like Indiana. So number 2, Indiana's offensive balance, hard to stop. And then an efficient quarterback. That balanced offense allows them to adapt their game plan based on what the defense is trying to take away. Joel Klatt likes to say they have answers. Indiana has answers for what you're trying to do against their offense. So the offense, 6th best in the nation, 2nd best in the Big Ten. And, when you've got the clubhouse leader or the Vegas odds-on leader to win the Heisman Trophy, Fernando Mendoza, he leads the nation with 24 TD passes. You have a good offense anytime you have someone in the Heisman running, because it's usually going to be a quarterback leading a high-powered offense winning that. IU scoring 45 points a game. Finally, the third reason, like Indiana, we referenced it earlier, Mike Locksley's record, 1-8 in October, I said that since 2023. He's not that much better, unfortunately, Maryland fans, in November. So I looked this up. In his 6 seasons, dating back to 2019, Mike Locksley is 5-17 in November. Now they're playing some good, better teams, there and everything, but not all better teams. So for whatever reason, late in the season, Locksley's teams really struggle. So I have 2 reasons why you could like Maryland, despite losing 3 in a row, which we talked about. Their worst loss is by 4 points to a good 6-2 Washington team. That was the, infamous come from behind win by Washington. They were down 20-3 and came back from, a 17-point deficit late in the third quarter. They have also covered 4 games in a row. So all that speaks to, as good as Indiana is at blowing people out, 21.5 points, that's just a lot for a team like Maryland with a pretty solid defense that like to keep it close. So number 2, Maryland's defense generates lots of turnovers, and they have a really good defensive line. And, only teams with strong defensive lines have given Indiana trouble the past 2 years. So that 5-point win at Iowa for Indiana, a lot of that was due to the tough Iowa defensive line giving that Indiana offensive line some fits. Last year it was Ohio State, Notre Dame with their strong defensive line. So, Maryland's capable maybe to put a little more pressure on that offensive line than some of the other teams Indiana has played. Maryland's defense, 6th best in the Big Ten. They're only giving up 17 points a game. And then that turnover margin, they're plus 11. They have 14 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries. So really good at taking away. And the other positive thing with that defense, Maryland's 17th rated in the nation in red zone defense. And if you look at their individual players on the defensive line for Maryland, all 4 players on that D-line are in the top 54 among Big Ten defensive linemen. So that really speaks to the talent they have front. And this is young talent up front with a couple different freshmen playing. So that bodes well. So what's my call here? I just say it's imperative for Maryland to get off a good start. I think their confidence level probably is not super high with the 3 losses in a row. And we all know if Indiana gets out to a fast start, they just smell blood in the water, right? Once they get rolling, they stay hyper aggressive like they did versus UCLA and Illinois. Maryland's going to have to win the turnover battle. I'm just not convinced Indiana is going to help them there with, dumb decisions by Fernando Mendoza. And then without a strong run game, I don't know how Maryland is going to keep drives alive enough to score enough to keep up with Indiana. I just think Indiana will, have the ball enough where they're going to wear down that young Maryland defense, and then factor in Mike Locksley's late season struggles too. So that all adds up. I'm going to take Indiana to keep the freight train rolling, so to speak, to win and cover the 20.5 points. I'm calling it Indiana 42, Maryland 17. So that's a 25-point win for the Hoosiers. Confidence level, I put a medium on that. All right, game number 4. We have Michigan at home, 21.5-point favorite against Purdue. Michigan, 4-1 in the Big Ten, 6-2 are right in the playoff hunt, right? They need to win out. They have the 12th easiest remaining Big Ten schedule per PFF. The key game is going to be, beating Ohio State at home. But there's some reasons based on history, obviously, to believe that can happen, and maybe they'll get some inclement weather to help even more. Justice Haynes is the key for Michigan just in general. Their hopes to make the playoffs hinge on that. I know Jalen Marshall is really good, but he's not explosive like Justice Haynes is. So he just has the ability to take it to the house at any time and is such a difference maker. Purdue at this point, 0-5 in the Big Ten, have lost 13 Big Ten games in a row, dating back to the last game of 2023. And their remaining schedule, it's crazy. Their remaining schedule is the most difficult, not just in the Big Ten, but in the nation, according to PFF. And they play, Ohio State, at Washington, home versus Indiana. So quite a gauntlet. They're probably looking at 2-10. The best chance for an upset, is going to be either here or at Washington, in my view. Both teams here against the spread, 3-5 versus the spread, so both not that great. So 3 reasons to like Michigan. First reason, Michigan is likely to win the turnover battle. Getting valued extra possessions to help cover that large spread, and 21.5 is a lot. They're going to need to win that turnover battle. Purdue is last in the Big Ten in turnover margin, -16. That's 131st in the nation. Michigan is second in the Big Ten with a +9 turnover margin. So that's 8th, tied for 8th in the nation. So big advantage there for the Wolverines. There is a good chance they're going to get some key turnovers. The issue's been really Ryan Brown. He's thrown Purdue has 10 interceptions thrown, 7 of them from Ryan Brown. So really need to cut down on those. Number 2, to like Michigan, their defensive front 4, all very good players across the board. Big mismatch versus Purdue's struggling offensive line, and that's going to really limit Purdue's upside on offense here and ability to move the ball. Now, Michigan, that line, they don't have the elite players like they've had in the past. I mean, Mason Graham was crazy good, top 5, draft pick. But clearly, all 5 defensive starters are good. All of them rank well per PFF. And then for Purdue, they're really the only one who ranks well on their offensive line per PFF is their center, Braden Joyner. Everyone else is kind of average to below average. So I think that's a mismatch for sure, favoring Michigan. Number 3, intangibles favor Michigan here. Knowing you can win out, play for a Big Ten championship, make the playoffs, playing at home. Purdue, even if they spring an upset, they're not going to make a bowl game here unless they find a way to win 4 straight, which is just crazy. So you wonder where Purdue's head's at. I just think the intangibles favor Michigan. So Purdue, what reasons for optimism though? Let's not be all too bleak on Purdue. Michigan in general, they don't blow out people. So it makes that 21.5 that Purdue's getting an awful lot of points. If you throw out the 60-point win Michigan had over Central Michigan, Michigan's biggest wins were 17-point wins over New Mexico and Washington. Everything else was below that. 14 over Wisconsin. Wisconsin, that was actually a pretty disappointing game. 11 over Michigan State. I know it was a late cover, but even then they were only up 18. So, they've only covered 21.5 points or won by more than 20.5 points one time, and that was against a MAC school. So maybe Purdue can do it. Number 2, Michigan's offensive strength is their 3rd-rated rushing attack, averaging 220 yards per game. We talked about Justice Haynes. Purdue is actually, though, solid against the run, so maybe they can contain that offense. 13th in rushing defense might not sound great, but if you look under the covers, Purdue's giving up 3.95 yards per carry. That is not bad. 11th in the Big Ten, 59th in the nation. Really, really not bad. So maybe they can contain Michigan's run game. And then finally, 3rd reason for Purdue, moving the ball has not been a big problem for them. Michigan's total defense is not as good as you would think. So really, if Purdue can get better red zone execution, there's a good chance they can put some points on the board to help cover that big spread. Purdue's total offense ranks 9th in the Big Ten. They have good balance, passing and running. Michigan ranks only 9th in total defense. So really, there's evidence there that Purdue could move the ball. Red zone offense is a problem, though. Purdue ranks last in the Big Ten in red zone offense. Michigan in red zone defense is 3rd. So that's where the rubber is going to hit the road here. Purdue's probably going to move the ball decently some, assuming that offensive line can do decent against Michigan's really good defensive line. But what happens when they get in the red zone? They need to convert at least field goals, but try to get a touchdown or two. So what's my call in this game? Neither team has covered well. Purdue has, in fact, failed to cover 4 of the last 5 games. Michigan failed to cover 3 of the past 4. As I mentioned earlier, though, I do like the intangibles of Michigan. Even though I don't think Purdue can pull off an upset, I do think there's something to be said where Michigan just not blowing out teams. I like Purdue to cover in this one. I have Michigan winning by 17, Michigan 31, Purdue 14. Because of that high spread, I'm calling this my Lock City pick of the week in taking Purdue, but Michigan safely wins. All right, and our final game of the week, number 23, USC, a 6.5-point favorite per FanDuel against Nebraska. 58.5 is the over-under. This is one of only, well, last week we had 3 virtual playoff elimination games of teams with 2 losses. This week, this is the only one. So whoever loses, USC or Nebraska, with the 3rd loss, you pretty much can say they're pretty much likely out of the playoff hunt. So USC, they're 5-2 overall, coming off a bye after that disappointing 10-point road loss to Notre Dame. Nebraska, 6-2 overall. If they can win out, I think they do have a good chance to make the playoffs. I just have a hard time thinking a 10-2 Big Ten team won't make it. So this could be the 4th playoff team for sure. And the schedule is fairly reasonable when you look at Nebraska's remaining schedule after USC. It does include Iowa, though, on the Friday after Thanksgiving. It could come down to that game, which is interesting. The other thing to note, and those probably will know, while I was prepping this afternoon, it was announced Matt Rule did get a new contract extension, so he will be staying in Nebraska and won't be going to Penn State. Here's a sad stat, though, for Nebraska fans. Nebraska has 28 straight losses versus AP top 25 teams. So USC is ranked, unfortunately, for Nebraska. Nebraska did beat Cincinnati on a neutral field earlier this year. Unfortunately, at the time, Cincinnati was not ranked, so that does not count. For the year, USC 4-3 against the spread, but have covered 2 straight. Nebraska's 2-5-1 against the spread, but not covered the last 4 games. So Nebraska really has barely, hung on in some of these games. So I'm giving 2 reasons why USC can cover. Nebraska's the 2nd worst in the Big Ten in sacks allowed, and USC excels in generating sacks. They're tied for 4th in the Big Ten and 15th in the nation, along with Ohio State, in sack rate. So that indicates USC is capable of disrupting Nebraska's pass offense, which is still 4th best in the Big Ten. Going a little deeper, USC 21 sacks on the year. The other thing that's cool about is that it's really a group effort. They have 4 different players with either 3 or 3.5 sacks. So Nebraska can't just game plan against just one key player here. USC has a good group to throw and put pressure on Dylan Raiola. In Nebraska, they really rely on the pass for offensive success. They average 272 yards of offense. So this is a pretty big deal. The USC's ability to put pressure is going to be a key part of this game. Second thing, Nebraska, they're 2nd best in the nation in passing defense. So that would seem perfectly suited to contain USC's nation's leading pass offense. So USC, not just the best pass offense in the Big Ten, but best in the nation. But it is in question given USC or Nebraska has not faced a passing offense rated in the top 50 in the nation. So gaudy statistics for Nebraska's pass defense, but really, are they up against really good passing teams? Cincinnati was one, but really, they've gotten their passing game rolling under Brendan Sorsby as the season has gone along. USC's offense here, led by Jaden Maiava, 68% completion rate, 15 TDs. They might have the best receiver core next to Ohio State in the Big Ten, maybe in the nation. USC people would argue they're even better than Ohio State. They're damn good. I'm not going to argue one way or another. Great play caller in Lincoln Riley, knows how to take advantage of those weapons. So this is really going to be a test of that highly rated Nebraska pass defense. Why take the points with Nebraska? Two reasons here. Number one, potentially overriding any statistics favoring USC is the fact they've struggled playing Big Ten road games, and especially traveling east. So that really makes it hard to analyze this game based on statistical data, given USC's travel struggles. Plus, it's going to be cold. What will be the impact of that? So let's get a little deeper on that. So last year, traveling east, USC lost at Michigan, to Minnesota, Maryland, and then they also lost at Washington. They did beat UCLA. So last year, 1-4 in Big Ten road games. And then this year, they lost at Illinois, of course, in that surprising result. They did beat Purdue, and of course, lost to Notre Dame. So if you add it up, in the Big Ten, USC is 1-6 in road games. They're in 1-4 in Big Ten road games traveling east, with the one win against bottom feeder Purdue. So really not very impressive there. USC's, they're just a different team on the road. So that's a worry, and it makes it hard to really project this game, I feel. Could weather be a factor? The game is in Lincoln, Nebraska in November, after all. It will be November 1st. Projected high of 50 on Saturday. The game is going to be a night game, though, 6:30 Central Time. So the temperature is probably going to be in the 40s, a breeze, 5 to 10 miles an hour. That could be a factor here as well. Number two, the spread at 6.5 points, favorite for USC. That's within a single score. And, for Nebraska, the good thing is it appears Matt Rule has broken the one-score hex, I would call it, for Nebraska. This year, they were 3-1 in one-score games. So if it's tight as expected, there's a good chance Nebraska not just can cover, but can win the game. So what's my call on this one? On a neutral field, I probably take USC by 2 touchdowns just because I really believe in that offense. And they even have a good running game, especially if they're healthy. What can we expect from USC given the road struggles, the weather? They did just lose by only 10 on the road to a very good Notre Dame team, though, right? The other thing is to think about, they have had 2 weeks to prepare, so they're not going to be like a road-weary team here. Nebraska's playing their 5th team in a row. I think you know where I'm going with this. I'm going to go against some of the other intangibles that favor Nebraska. I'm going to take USC's superior talent. I hope I don't get burned here. I did when I took USC over Illinois earlier. But I do expect them also to put pressure on Dylan Raiola with that talented defensive line. Going to generate some potential mistakes from him. I'm calling it USC winning by 10. USC 34, Nebraska 24. I'm giving it a confidence of low, but I do think Nebraska is going to win the game and cover that one. So I'm going to bring up the finish out here. My spread and picks to remind against the spread. I'm choosing Penn State, Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, and USC, with Purdue as my Lock City pick of the week against Michigan. So that's it, folks. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. You can follow me on at Big Jeff's FT Ball on X. I appreciate you joining today, and good luck to your teams this weekend. Have a good one.